Let's make it happen. Okay, so next we're going to talk about ensuring your knowledge transfer, and basically the reason for doing this is project continuity. So again, the enablers are the part in your student guide that you might want to pay attention to is maintain team and knowledge transfer, discuss project responsibilities within the team, outline expectations for your working environment, confirm the approach that you're going to be using for your knowledge transfers. There are no specific deliverables or tools for this section. This is really just kind of talking about how you do it and what's important for you to remember when you're actually performing this. So now, but a definition that you will want to pay attention to is explicit knowledge, and that is knowledge that can be codified using symbols such as words, numbers, or pictures. This type of knowledge is documented and shared with others. Tactic knowledge, and that is personal knowledge that's difficult to articulate and share, such as beliefs, experiences, and insights. This type of knowledge is essential. You have to provide the context of that explicit knowledge. It's kind of like the way I'm interjecting information into what I'm covering with you tonight. So as I'm interjecting different comments, thoughts, suggestions, examples, that is tactic knowledge. So that's just a off-the-cuff example. Knowledge management, you have several levels, or you have these levels. You have the individual level, the project level, and the organization level. Individual level is going to be each team member, making sure that they know how to perform their work, making sure that they know what tasks are assigned to them, what the scope, what the schedule, and the cost of those tasks that are assigned to them, making sure that they have the knowledge that is required in order to be able to perform the job. They may have to, supplement that by research. They may collaborate with other team members, or they may, go take a deep dive into the knowledge repository or into the project's, lessons learned and different information like that. Project knowledge is going to focus on achieving the goals of the project. It's going to be about, making sure that your project's performance is and on time, that you're meeting your milestones and all those different things. The project manager is going to solicit this knowledge. They're going to pull it from other projects. They can maybe pull experience from subject matter experts, from team members. The project management office is always a great source of this knowledge, as they exist for the sole purpose of defining and maintaining the project management knowledge of an organization. If the organization doesn't have a project management knowledge office, then that's where people with experienced team members and things like that come into play. There is an organizational level, which focuses on managing the programs or the portfolios, and the program manager and the portfolio manager gets information from their peers who have managed other programs and projects or portfolios that are related, and they adapt this knowledge to their specific needs. So they'll pick and pull from it the things that apply to that specific project. Lessons learned are very important for ensuring continuity. Because this is knowledge. This is not just knowledge that you're getting in this project. It could be knowledge that you gained from a previous project that was similar. It could be knowledge that's used, for the next phase. Like maybe something happened in the first phase that can help prevent, subsequent phases from experiencing the same delay. Or maybe there was a really unique workaround that we tried on another project that really would have helped out here on this project. Lessons learned can be gained from positive and negative experiences. Lessons learned actually help you keep from having to reinvent the wheel, because starting over from scratch every single time or experiencing that groundhog effect can be very time-consuming and costly. They can help minimize the amount of time and effort that you can spend on it. But if you're the first person to do a project of that nature, the time and the effort that you spend documenting your lessons learned pays huge dividends for your corporation, your clients in the future, because it can really shave off some time for you if you already know what to expect and how to work around it, or what you can do to minimize it. Things to consider when you're doing your lessons learned is scheduling. Like maybe that if you turn your request in, 30 days earlier, you tend to get what you want or something like that. It can be just little bitty things like that. Conflict management lessons, like learning how to manage that conflict. Maybe you have particular experience with the vendor. You can have vendor lessons learned that'll be specific to it. Maybe you've done something for this particular client or customer before. You can have lessons learned from that, and then just strategy and tactical lessons and just several other things. You can pick up lessons learned or have lessons learned that you're documenting from just several different things. Again, just prime example, maybe during this time we've learned that our normal schedule of doing something like maybe putting our orders in 30 days early, maybe right now it's best to put your orders in 45 days early, something like that. It can be anything like that. Your lessons learned register, this is an actual project document that is used to record the knowledge that you gained during the project so that it can be used in the current project. It also gets entered into the lessons learned repository, and that lessons learned repository is a record of historical information that's been learned from several projects. And so looking at this diagram, you can see lessons learned register is a single project, but the lessons learned repository is a collection of information that's been learned from several projects. So you can see how that could be beneficial. And if you continuously are updating that information, it's staying current. So project responsibilities within the team, you have several layers of this too. So leadership is responsible for communicating the organization's vision for inspiring the team to focus on the goals of the project. Facilitation is guiding a group to a successful solution to maybe a specific problem. And political awareness is just keeping your project manager aware of the organization's political environment. Like in today's environment, you may be realizing that there is a shift going on in the organization from using, I'm just going to be funny, from moving from WebEx to Microsoft Teams, just something like that. It may not impact your project, but it might. So just throwing that out as an example. Networking, facilitating relationships amongst stakeholders, amongst team members, amongst, just people in the organization is extremely helpful because that's how you get knowledge that's being shared at several levels, and that's how you really building those, that information base that you can have to help prevent some minor issues that you may or may not have been aware of. And then knowledge is not constant. What you knew yesterday can change based on what you did today. What you do today can, maybe not be something you'll do tomorrow. You want to continuously evaluate your environment for new risks. You'll want to follow the risk management plan. You want to proactively address risks before they become issues and will affect your project. And I want you to notice there that a risk can become an issue. That's something that's important to note there. Don't hold on to information. Share it. I mean, being the SME is great, but you knowing everything and not sharing it with the rest of the team or communicating it out does nobody any good. Because what if you, and I hate to say it, but what if you have to have an unexpected surgery or something? Now all the knowledge rests with you, and your project is now suffering because you're no longer there. So it's not a good idea to hoard information. You do want to use the appropriate tools to share knowledge with your stakeholders, because what if you've agreed that certain types of information are going to be shared face to face, but then you turn around and you send an email and I don't know, maybe these stakeholders don't check the email for that. Several different reasons. So you want to make sure that you're using the tools face to face. You can do telephone, email, wikis, but you want to make sure that you're following the tools that you have and what you've agreed on as your communication channels. Most people read email, so don't take that to heart. So it's just an example. Your knowledge transfer can consist of connecting individuals either in person or virtually so that they can share information and collaborate. You can do this through networking. You can do this through special interest groups, meetings, seminars, just several different variety of virtual events. You can do training. You can have work shadowing, reverse shadowing, or just several different individualized methods to exchange that information. There are several different ways you can transfer knowledge. if your organization does have a project management office, or if the organization that you're working with has a project management office, you'll want to follow its guidelines and make sure that you're documenting that knowledge appropriately. You want to be alert and aware of new sources. You want to follow the communications plan to make sure that that knowledge is going out to stakeholders. And I know that I've kind of said that before, but the fact that it's being repeated again should let you know how important it is. And you want to proactively seek new knowledge, not just as a project manager, but just as, you know, somebody in the environment that's constantly changing. You want to be proactively seeking knowledge. Compile your lessons learned register throughout the project's life cycle, because if you wait to the end to try to do the lessons learned register and you haven't been doing it throughout, some very key things can be forgotten because we are creatures of habit. We tend to focus on that thing that is right in front of us. So there could have been something that happened in the first 2 weeks that was really important, but if you didn't document it then, at the end you may not remember it, because at the end you're just really happy you're done. And then you want to make sure that at the end of your project life cycle that your lessons learned register is being added to the repository so that it can serve as an aid for people that are coming after you. Any questions, comments? Okay, so the last time when I was kind of doing the activity, I didn't stop sharing. So for many of you that were looking for what I was reading to be on the screen, it wasn't on the screen because I wasn't sharing it, because on my version of the guide, it had the answer. And if I would have shared it with the answer, that wouldn't have gotten me what I was looking for. So this time, to prevent confusion, I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint, and I'm going to start asking you the questions so that you know that you can't see it. But the student guide that you got from PMI should have an activity potentially at the end of it that would have the questions with no answers. So if you wanted to refer to activity 3-9 in the student guide, you would probably be able to read the questions that I'm reading out loud, for those of you who want to follow along. So same scenario. Again, we're going to use 234 West Adams project. This is our same scenario, but in this scenario, it is only one of many low-income home building projects that you're going to be managing during the next several years. During the project, you and your project team will learn as you go with the intent of using this knowledge to improve the next project and so on for all of your future projects. So your West Adams project is only one of many low-income home building projects that you're going to be managing during the next several years. During the project, you and your project team will learn as you go with the intent of using the knowledge that you're gaining to improve your next project and so on for future projects. So that's the scenario. Now, here is my question. When should the transfer of knowledge take place? Should it take place at the end of the project, at the end of each phase of the project, when the lessons learned register is archived, or throughout the project? Who wants to be my hero this time?
Throughout the project.
Thank you. I always love having a new hero. Thank you. Okay. Next question. What are examples of tactic knowledge? And here are your choices: beliefs, experience, and insights, words, numbers, and pictures, anything of value to another person, or only knowledge about the project scope, schedule, and budget. What is the best example here of tactic knowledge?
Beliefs, experience, and insights.
Thank you very much. That is correct. Management of project knowledge exists on 3 levels, and I want to see if you can remember what they are. Here are your choices. First choice, technical, administrative, and procedural. Option 2, individual, project, and organization. Option 3, scope, schedule, and budget. Option 4, practical, theoretical, and actual? Which one is it?
Individual, project, and organization.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, next question. When is the lessons learned register created? When is the lessons learned register created? Is it created at the conclusion of the project after all tasks have been completed? Next, is it completed after the completion of the first phase of work? Next option, at the beginning of the project execution? Or last option, at the beginning of the project. When is the lessons learned register created?
In the very beginning.
Very good. Great answer. Thank you. Who is ultimately responsible for transferring knowledge learned during the project? Is the sponsor responsible? Is the project manager responsible? Are the work package owners responsible? Or all stakeholders responsible? Who is ultimately responsible for transferring knowledge learned during the project? Anyone?
Oh, the project manager. It's his project.
Absolutely. Great answer. Thank you. The project manager is ultimately responsible for knowledge
His or her
transfer.
project. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start sharing again. And so when we started this, we were kind of talking about what we were going to do. And at the beginning of this section, the whole section of doing the work, your goals we were learning were how to assess and manage risk, how to execute the project with the urgency that was required to deliver value. You learned how to manage communications, how to engage stakeholders, how to create your project artifacts, how to manage project changes, how to attack issues with the optimal action to achieve project success, and how to confirm the approach for knowledge transfers. That was the goal of this section, and that's what you guys have been going over for the last few sessions. So here are the questions, my last few questions for you tonight, and let's kind of talk about what aspects of executing the project plan have you found to be the most challenging? And this is anyone can talk to me. What aspects so far of executing a project plan have you found to be the most challenging?
Are you talking about in general through experience, or are you talking about what we should have read throughout this thing?
So why don't I do this twofold? For somebody who, if I have an experienced project manager, let's talk about from experience first. From actual experience, somebody tell me what do you find most challenging when you're executing a project plan? Let's start there.
A lot of times the stakeholders can be a pain.
Okay, and why?
Well, because not a pain, but just identifying everybody. Because a lot of times when in a couple that I've worked on, you would have X, Y, and Z as the, stakeholder, and then you think you got everything like that, and boom, there's another stakeholder, and you're having to redo things because this one's a little,
that can definitely be challenging, and that does absolutely happen. So I agree. Thank you very much. Now, what about in just so far in what you've learned in the sessions, like what you're learning from the sessions? What do you think so far has been most challenging? So let's try it different. What part of what you've been learning about doing the work do you find most confusing? Let me try it different.
I think that maybe one thing that can be a little confusing is the issues versus a risk. And I guess I'm figuring out that it is word positioning. Sometimes that's going to make the difference between whether it's an actual issue or a risk, or if it's neither, or it's just kind of information.
You are absolutely correct. And that is the key to, that's something to remember, not just in relation to an issue or a risk, but just in the way that PMI asks questions. So on the exam, when they give you information, we normally suggest that you read the entire question and the possible answers completely before you answer it. Because that can make a huge difference. So like, for example, in that one of those examples that I gave you when I was asking you, is this an issue or a risk? And what made the difference was that it was a scheduled item, like, which means it was known it was part of our scheduled plan. So it was neither an issue or a risk because it was part of the scheduled plan, right? And that can make a huge difference. And then, so yeah, absolutely, little bitty things like that make a difference on the answer. And so it's always important to kind of read the whole question and the possible selections before you answer, because it can make a difference. Because you also want to be aware of times where they can change what your answer would be when they throw in except or but or not. They like to throw in those words, and that changes the whole answer possibility for you. So, and you may be getting a bunch of things that are true, but they're looking for the one thing that was not true. So it's important to take that time to read it and make sure you have an understanding of what they're asking. So you're right. And that is, I would say, one of the more challenging parts of PMI's exams are normally that. So that's a good point. Anyone else? Okay. Then my next question, what tools will you use to effectively execute projects in the future? What tools will you use to effectively execute projects in the future?
How about the issues log?
Absolutely. What else?
Yeah, I was going to mention the issue log as well. I mean, I use it now, but I think its real value is that it has the owners of the issues assigned, so that an issue just doesn't float around out there kind of unattended.
It can just be stuck in limbo if you don't assign an owner.
Yeah, gee, nobody wants to own a risk or an issue. What a surprise.
Yeah, and what you don't want to end up having is, because you're not assigning owners and everyone's expecting that the project manager is the one that's going to resolve it, because a lot of times it's in a functional area that the project manager has no control over, right?
That's very true.
So if you find yourself with an issues log where every issue is owned by the project manager, you might want to rethink your approach.
I would love to use the risk register much more effectively and engage stakeholders in that process to proactively plan for opportunities and risks, or opportunities and threats.
Absolutely.
I can't say I will, but I'd love to.
I understand. I understand. The proactively part of that is the thing that calls to me the most. Right?
Yep.
Another tool you can use is the lesson learned register.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, and tell me why it's the thing you're naming.
What was your question again?
Tell me why it's the one you're naming specifically. Like lessons learned, what about it?
so that you will know if there are, issues that may reoccur. You don't want those same issues to occur again, or make sure that for the future that those same issues doesn't occur.
Yeah, so when you're talking about lessons learned, it's not just important that you are documenting lessons learned. Do you think it's equally as important that you're going to that lessons learned repository to see if there's some things that you can, proactively address in your project that may have happened before?
Exactly. That's the purpose of it. Exactly.
Okay. And somebody tell me, when we're talking about lessons learned register, is it one project or multiple?
Say that again?
So there was a difference between the lessons learned register and the lessons learned repository, right?
Yeah, so repository is when you have many projects. That's where a historical of your lessons learned is for the project.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you so much. Thank you for playing along. I appreciate it. Anyone else? And it doesn't have to be just tools we talked about tonight. What about tools you talked about in some of the other sessions? Okay.
Communication plan.
And the communications plan, you could see how it could be important after what we talked about tonight too, but tell me why you're bringing out the communications plan.
Just to make sure that the method of communication that you plan to use, that everybody is on the same page and is aware of what method would be used, how often it's going to be sent out, etc.
Right, and making sure it gets updated when changes are approved, right?
Exactly. That's the other purpose of it, to make sure the changes are documented in there as well.
Yeah, because wouldn't it be absolutely terrible if only a handful of people had known that those windows were delayed? Right? Okay. Thank you for playing along. What else do we have? Anybody else?
Can I ask a general question to the project managers that are here?
Absolutely.
What software do y'all use as far as tracking your projects? Do you have anything that you prefer, say like on the iPhone or on your computer, or what is it that you guys really find is extremely helpful in keeping track of the progression, the milestones, and how your projects are going? Like, is there a dashboard that you guys enjoy using over something else? Is it a visual? Is it, you open it up and it's blinking red because, it's off time. I didn't know if there was something that, somebody uses that they enjoy more than another.
Here in construction in Florida, we use a Excel tool that's on a server, and all the updates. The nice part about it is all the stakeholders that are involved in the project can update it, and everyone can see everyone's updates real time. So, if materials come in or a contractor is doing something, you can go and put notes on it. If it's roadblocks, you put notes on it, and then everyone can see what the roadblocks, what's going on with it, and the progress of it, the due dates, all that stuff.
That's an in-house program?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we use Jira Align, where you have the multiple application teams, and if there is anything in red, that's let us know that there is, a particular feature or user story has not been satisfied. So that's what we use for tracking activities. And it's just like the program board. They have a list of all the teams and their features or user stories to dependencies. It has a list of risks. Everything is right there on that program board.
Oh, wow.
Anyone else? So those are things that are like tools that have been using, specifically inside of AT&T, but just remember in general, when it comes to answering a question like that for the exam, you're going to your answer is going to be the PMIS. And a lot of people outside of different, our company might be using Microsoft Project to have a lot of information there. There are several other tools that exist out there. You may see Jira Align is becoming very popular. I think that depending on organizations, some of them may be putting information into several different types of things. Microsoft Teams has this feature of the spreadsheet, kind of like what the gentleman was talking about, where you can have a spreadsheet that's shared in Teams that everybody on the team could be updating. There's so many different collaboration types of tools that you can use to communicate information amongst a group of individuals that are working together. But it's just really going to depend on, from a practical perspective, it's going to depend on the client or organization that you're working with, because some clients might have specific systems that they'll give you access to that they might want you to use. But the most common one, just generically, is Microsoft Project. That is a great point. Okay. Any other questions? Now is your time. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for playing along with me tonight. Thank you guys very much for talking to me tonight. It helped keep me going. I hope that I was able to answer most of your questions, and I hope that you guys remember where you can find the information that was related to tonight. So again, please make sure that you're referencing your student guide. And in your student guide, you're going to take a look in the handbook. You'll look at managing project changes, manage project issues, ensure knowledge transfer to project continuity in the student guide. The list of the chapters that we talked about, all of this information was found either in Chapter 4 or Chapter 11. And then the actual processes, if you're looking in the PIM box and you're looking at the different processes, it was process 4.4 for manage project knowledge, 4.6 for perform integrated change control, and in Chapter 11, it was 11.6 for implement risk responses, and 11.7 for monitor risk. There were no specific agile processes reviewed this time, but that is where you can find the corresponding information. I highly encourage you guys to take a look at it in your student guide and to read the additional information that is there. I did a stare and compare. A lot of everything was covered in there, but you might have a wonderful opportunity to kind of highlight it. Hopefully you guys are doing things like making your own flashcards, that kind of thing, to help you study. The biggest part of this is learning how to study and learning how to understand the information so that you can retain it to answer the questions that may be thrown at you, because they can mix those questions up quite frequently and in ways that will make you question your sanity sometimes. So make sure that you're actually taking the time to read the materials, read the corresponding sections in the student guide and in the PIM box, and study, study, study. That is my personal advice. And then I'm going to ask one more time, does anyone have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. You actually get to leave me 9 minutes earlier than 7 o'clock. And I want to thank you guys for a wonderful evening. And Philip, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and you can stop the recording.